When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 108, A Stroke's Beautiful Outcome as She Moved Through the Good, Bad, and Ugly. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our courageous and daring guest, Marcia Moran. Marcia holds a Bachelor of Science in Political Science from the University of North Dakota and a Master's in Business Administration from Chapman University. A versatile individual, she studied art in Norway and earned various certifications in well-being, health coaching, and as an IASIS technician. After helping numerous entrepreneurs with business plans and strategies, Marcia founded her consulting practice, Performance Architect, in 2012. However, her life took a significant turn when she suffered a major stroke in 2014, which led her to become an advocate for stroke survivors. Motivated by her recovery journey, Marcia created Stroke Forward to offer hope and inspiration to stroke survivors and their caregivers. Through her speaking engagements, she shares insights on healing and self-advocacy, aiming to support those affected by major health crises. Marcia lives near Washington, D.C., with her husband, Jim, who played a vital role in her recovery, and they enjoy weekends at Deep Creek, Maryland. Her experiences and insights are also captured in her book, Stroke Forward. Well, hello there, Marcia. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Hello, Salima. It's so nice to be here.
This is lovely, of course. It is really great to have you as a guest on the show today, and I am really grateful for your willingness to be here and for your openness to tell your story today. I'm truly humbled to encounter guests just like yourself who allow me to basically tap into their vulnerabilities and draw on their strength and insight and inspiration, all that gets shared into this space. So it's incredibly important that we take a stance together to help break barriers of mental stigma.
You're quite welcome. I actually think that vulnerability is the place where you have to open up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. In case you're still wondering, just in case, this podcast is all about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And we know that no matter what the story, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way, which remains tucked away. So this platform serves in a way to break the barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So today, together, my hopeful mission is for both of us to encourage people to share and tell what individuals typically have reservation to express. And of course, I'm continuing to bring forward a trend, and it's called the mental beauty rethink. Marcia, what immediately comes to your mind when you hear the phrase the mental beauty rethink?
So I think before the stroke, I wasn't thinking about anything personal,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was just go, 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 go.
Right.
The family came after,
Mm-hmm.
if there was any after.
Right.
And now it's like I have the most beautiful family,
Mm-hmm.
and I think about them often first before I think about what I'm doing for myself. So it flipped.
Your own personal experience allowed you to retake stock of your life. And of course, no one wants to experience a stroke. You were able to make adjustments that you felt or that you realized were needed, and you implemented those changes.
You could say so, but it took a long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm sure. Right. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's pretty awesome that I get to hear that insight from you. So, I'm ready to dive deep with you today and uncover your untold story. Are you ready?
I am worried.
Okay. All right, Marcia, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. What would it say?
So for me, it's I don't know what's on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so true for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true for other people as well.
So that your title is You Don't Know What's on the Other Side.
Yep.
So really capturing that element of unknown, that element of surprise, and it doesn't necessarily have to be what you're anticipating or predicting. It could very well be something
Yep.
unknown to you, like unexpected, in maybe even a good way, maybe in a not so good way, but that element of surprise.
Yeah. And it's funny because that's true for everyone. We don't know what's on the other side.
Yeah, there's no guarantee
Yep.
in what life holds, or what, it doesn't matter what kind of path we're on or what sort of plan we've made. You don't really know what those curveballs would be,
No.
or if you're going to have a curveball, or if things will go smooth, right?
Well, if it's going smooth, how good is it?
Mm-hmm. That's another great question. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's great when we're able to reflect on that deep level.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for sharing that headline. All right, so let's segue into your untold story, if that's good for you. I'm curious about your untold story, so go for it. Give us that snapshot of what it's all about. Let us know.
So think about when you go to bed
Mm-hmm.
and everything's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day you wake up and things are really weird. Like you're thinking, I'm going to go to breakfast, but I don't think I'm going to make it.
Mm.
And then you start texting someone and you go, that's funny. I can't read my text. Oh, well, I'll just sleep it off. And you put your phone down and you roll over and that's it.
Mm.
Think about that. Yeah, that was my first day being a stroke patient.
Okay. So that was your first day being a stroke patient. And when was that? Where was that?
So it was Sunday, March 30th, 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at home. And I'm glad I was at home because if my husband hadn't been here to get help, I
Mm-hmm.
probably wouldn't have made it.
Right. How long did it take for him to realize that something was not okay with you?
Well, he was downstairs looking at the sports.
Mm-hmm.
I was upstairs, and when I woke after my text, I was paralyzed from the right side down.
Wow.
So I had to struggle to the door. I had to reach up and open the handle.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to take a break because I was so tired. And then I had to struggle down the hall. And at that point, I ran out of gas. And so I have no idea how long it took him. But finally, he came upstairs and he said, Marcia, are you okay?
Right. So all that while, he didn't really quite know the struggle you were having until he came up the stairs.
Yeah.
I'm so curious, like, how long was that period of time? Because, I mean, if you're half paralyzed and you're trooping on trying to get out of the bed, get out of the bedroom, turn the knob, get out into the hallway, and having to take breaks, like, what was that time frame like?
I have no idea.
No idea.
Yeah.
By that point, you must have realized that something serious is going on, right? Like, you weren't brushing it off anymore.
No, I wasn't brushing it off anymore. And I didn't realize I couldn't speak until he came upstairs and talked to me. So,
Oh,
what part of your brain is missing
right.
when you can't open your mouth and talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually had aphasia, which is a communication disorder, but I didn't know it at that point.
Right. And so when you say it felt like part of your brain was missing, can you say a little bit more about that?
So I knew that I had to get up, or maybe my life would be over, right? So I chose to get up. And I knew I had to get help, and I knew my husband was downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't occur to me to yell,
Mm-hmm.
talk, anything. Didn't
Right.
even, yeah, I didn't even think about it. So that part of my brain was missing
Right.
already, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. That is definitely something that would have been a foreign concept for anybody, right? Like, it's like you didn't even
Hmm.
have those neurons firing to kind of signaling you to do something that we would do so naturally. Like when we need help and we know someone's home, we ask for help.
Yeah, didn't even occur to me.
Right. And so when you realized that you couldn't speak or you couldn't communicate, do you remember what sort of thoughts you had running in your mind?
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first time I realized it was really perilous
Mm-hmm.
was when the paramedics came to the house and looked at me and asked when I had a stroke. I didn't even think of the word stroke until that time. And why did I think I was okay? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know.
Would it be fair to say, okay, maybe it was a bit of denial, like, no, I'm okay, like, this is okay, like, I can manage this, this will go away, like, this is temporary. Were those kinds of thoughts anything that you were entertaining?
I'm going to say no. I think I wasn't really thinking anything at that point. I mean, there's get up, find help, get to a hospital. Those are probably the only thoughts that I had.
Okay.
And it really was such a shock when somebody said stroke.
Right.
But that's for old people, you know?
Right.
I know it's not for old people now, but that was my thinking then.
And so how old were you when you had your stroke?
53.
Yeah, so that's so not old. Okay, so you're like, yeah, that's for old people. I'm not old yet. Like, what are you talking about? Right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So what happened then?
So the paramedics loaded me into the ambulance and I lost consciousness.
Okay.
So the first thing I remember is being in the hospital and somebody had dressed me in a hospital gown and
Mm-hmm.
injected me or stuck a needle in my arm.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband was there, and that's all I remember.
Right.
The next thing I remember is it's the same day,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a physical therapist who came into my room with a belt, and she said, "We're going to take a walk now." It's like, oh, yeah, really?
Right.
But she was a very good physical therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I got up, and she did slowly walk me around the nurse's station, and I got back to the bed. And I was so grateful to be back without falling.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm.
And then I immediately fell asleep.
Right.
Yeah.
That must have taken a big toll on your body to do that amount of work.
Yeah. So I had been paralyzed on my right hand side when I left home,
Mm-hmm.
but I had some movement in my right hand side at the hospital that day. So something had gotten me to be better a little bit.
Right. That's amazing. And so, what are some of the other things that you ended up contending with? Like, I mean, you know, suffering a stroke, having paralysis on one side of your body. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, It's funny, but I thought it was huge. And then I went to a brain injury services the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw so many people who they had much more significant challenges than I had. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt grateful
Mm-hmm.
for what I had been through. Because although it wasn't pleasant,
Right.
it's so much better than what they had been given to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I felt humbled, really.
And while, I can hear that gratitude in your voice, and I can hear the expression of, feeling humble that, after going to get that next phase of treatment, I could see that other people were affected differently. And I was graced with this much impact, and other people had even more kinds of intense impact. But that doesn't mean that what you went through was not huge. Can we at least agree on that?
Yeah. Oh, yes, we can.
Okay, because you're like, no, it wasn't huge. Because let me tell you why. And I'm like, wait, hold on though. Um, that is still,
No,
it's still
no.
big. It's huge. To
Oh,
me,
yeah,
it's huge, at
it
least.
yeah, it was huge, but seeing other people
Hmm.
and what they went through, it's not as huge as it could have been. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So I went to the hospital for 5 days, and I went to rehab for 2 weeks, and then I went home for 6 weeks, and then I went to outpatient rehab for 8 weeks,
Hmm.
and then I was done.
Right.
I wasn't really done.
Right.
And actually, that's something that I think we should talk about a little bit.
Yeah. Tell me more.
So, when you're done with rehab in a few months, you're not done with rehab.
Right.
The insurance companies must do better than they do, because
Hmm.
I had a physical therapist that I hired for a year, and she worked with me. At first, it was twice a week, and then it was once a week, but she worked with me for a year.
Hmm.
And by the time she got done, if you were not a physical therapist or doctor or anything like that and saw me walking down the street, you wouldn't know that anything was wrong with me.
Right.
But if you talked to me, you know that something was really wrong because I didn't really talk back.
Right. There were still communication barriers.
Yeah.
So when you say insurance companies need to do better, are you also saying that when you're done with rehab, it's because insurance only provides rehabilitation for a certain period of time, or they determine what
Exactly.
your rehabilitation plan will have, and beyond that, it's on you?
That's my expectation for now. Yeah.
Right. So rehabilitation through insurance is done, but that doesn't mean that the recovery process is complete. As an individual suffering, you still have to work through it.
Yeah. And I think that's something that all patients need to understand is that you're on your own.
Hmm.
And you have to find a way to make it work.
Hmm. Right. And so, how did you make it work? Because clearly, you're sitting here today telling me this story, and we know that you help a lot of people who are now struggling and suffering with what you went through, and you've written a book and created Stroke Forward as well. So, I mean, what did you do to make it work?
So I decided that I would learn to talk again,
Hmm.
and I would talk normally.
So it was a conscious decision, like, I am going to talk again. This is what's happening. End of story.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so my therapist said, you're going to speak more slowly. You're going to have to think of other words when you can't get the word that you want out.
Hmm.
And it sounded terrible to me.
Hmm. Right.
I figured, well, there's got to be something out there.
Right.
And it was 2 years after the stroke. And I still hadn't found anything. And I was out trying to run,
Hmm.
fell down, dislocated my elbow, called my husband and asked him to take me to the hospital, which he did.
Hmm.
And when I was in the hospital, they gave me morphine
Okay.
so that they could
Yeah, for the pain.
reset my arm.
Hmm.
And when I was on morphine, I could talk again
Oh, wow.
normally, like now.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo!
Wow. Okay.
And then the morphine wore off and I couldn't talk again.
Right.
But that told me that there's something out there,
Hmm.
right? So I went to a chiropractor,
Hmm.
and he does something called the Erconia laser.
Mm-hmm.
I went and talked to him as much as I could, told him about my stroke, and asked him if he could help me. And he said, I don't know.
Mm.
And I'm going,
Was he willing to try?
he was willing to try.
Okay.
After the first treatment, I could talk a little bit better. I'm going,
Okay.
woohoo.
Yes, progress.
So what the Erconia laser did for me was it allowed me to speak, I'm going to say conversationally and slowly. So conversationally, it's like, hi, how are you? My name is Marcia. The weather's beautiful today, stuff like that.
Okay.
But I was talking really slowly.
But so simple conversational, like being able to interact with people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Assuming that I could talk to you.
Okay.
Sometimes I could. I couldn't talk to you. Sometimes I could.
Right.
If you were on the phone, never. I couldn't talk to you.
Okay. Okay. That's fair.
And then at 3.5 years after my stroke, I discovered IASIS microcurrent neurofeedback, which is a boatload to say.
Mm-hmm.
But it was another chiropractor, a different chiropractor. And he had just gotten it. And he said, Marcia, you need to take a look at this. Go home and look at the URL and tell me if you want to try.
Mm-hmm.
It said it helps people with a boatload of issues. And I'm going, yeah, right. Who are they trying to?
So you were like a bit doubtful still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I saw that 85% of traumatic brain injury survivors who tried this got better. And I'm going,
Oh,
85%.
that's a
Pretty
high,
big.
yeah, that's a pretty big success rate.
Yeah. And then I saw a little later, there's nothing that the machine does to you that would make you worse. And I'm going, okay, I got to try it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So talked to the doctor and he did some tests on me and then he set me up. And the thing I remember most,
Mm-hmm.
well, two things. One, when he cleaned my skin, it felt like cat spit.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's wet and gooey and gritty, I'm going, ew.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then he hooked me up and he turned it on and I felt nothing. I'm going, is he kidding me?
Right.
That night, I could talk better.
Interesting.
And after 16 sessions,
Mm-hmm.
I talk like I do today.
In 16 sessions?
16.
Wow.
1-6.
1-6. That's it.
Yep.
And how
Yep.
frequent were these sessions? Like a few times a week or once a week or?
So it starts off, I went 2 times a week for the first 3 weeks. And then I went once a week for about 4 weeks and then once every other week. So all in all, it took about 3 months.
Wow. That's a very short turnaround period.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, I probably should have asked you this before I asked you to tell me about like how you found a way to make it work, but I have this other question and I probably should have asked in that order first. But before you found a way to make it work, how were you able to communicate?
So my husband was pretty good at guessing what I meant.
Mm-hmm. He learned guessing games.
And I could speak to him kind of pretty well,
Mm-hmm.
except when I was angry. And sometimes he made me very, very angry.
Okay. As in, like, you were frustrated? Is that what you mean? Like, you were just getting frustrated by, like, he wasn't
Yeah.
getting what you were trying to convey?
Yeah. That's exactly it.
Okay.
And so at 2.5 years after my stroke,
Mm-hmm.
it was the first time I actually got mad at him.
Mm.
Yeah. So usually I would just shut down,
Mm-hmm.
thinking, no, it's not worth it. This time I was mad.
Mm-hmm.
And it was over the stupidest thing. So we were in the car and he said, tell me how to get to so and so. And he didn't give me the time to type it into my computer and hit go.
Mm-hmm.
So he took the highway and I'm going, I was mad.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's stupid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I actually yelled at him. It's like, wow, I'm yelling.
Right.
This is awesome.
Right. So in one sense, you're expressing all this frustration and anger, but then celebrating like, oh my goodness, look at that. I can express this anger and frustration and I can use my loud voice and get angry and mad now. This is a celebration.
Oh, and he got mad too.
He was probably not expecting that from you, right? Like,
Of
what
course
just
not.
happened?
But he was also proud of me
Yeah.
because I had broken through a barrier.
Yeah. That is breaking through a barrier for sure. 100%.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, I mean, obviously, when you were trying to figure out how to communicate, you were being creative, and as much as there were times where you were shutting down, you were very patient. And it seems like your husband was also not giving up. He was trying everything that he knew how in his wheelhouse to be there by your side to help figure it out with you.
So I don't think patient is the right word.
Patient is not the right word. Okay. Tell me more.
Yeah. So I would just shut down.
Okay.
And so it's like putting yourself in a cocoon and nobody can reach you when you're in that cocoon.
The cocooning is like hiding out, like no one can reach in.
So it's like every time that I couldn't speak,
Uh-huh.
I felt like a little piece of me went away.
Oh.
So over time, I became smaller and smaller and smaller.
Uh-huh.
So, and it's not speaking to people in public, not speaking to my husband. It's just not speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I know you say you weren't speaking and you couldn't speak and you'd shut down. So, beyond the anger, were there other emotions that you experienced?
When I first had the stroke, I say that I was at the bare bones.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew there were things that I used to do
Mm-hmm.
that I couldn't do anymore.
Okay.
And I guess when I think about the words shut down, that's the most shut down I've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
When people would try to talk to me or try to get me to do things, I would do them if I could, but I wouldn't feel them,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
And I wouldn't feel things for, I remember Christmas, and we went to the lake for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And every time we used to go to the lake, I would just feel excited because it was beautiful up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think that thinking back to that time in your life, that perhaps what you're describing now is a really intense amount of sadness that was too painful to bear, so you buried it?
It's possible.
Mm,
So they say that 2/3 of stroke patients suffer depression.
right.
Now, I will tell you that I never suffered depression,
Hmm.
but I think maybe I did. I just didn't accept it.
But the situation could be depressing, right? Like, I mean, it's a whole
Yeah.
new gambit that you had to acclimatize to, adjust to, and it's like your life that you knew was taken from you, and you kind of had to rebuild.
Yeah. So I figured that I was going to run a 5K on my first anniversary.
Oh, okay. All right.
I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
didn't.
But you were ambitious. You had goals, right? There was something you were setting yourself out to do, which means that you had intentions of getting your life
Getting
on,
out of it.
yeah, getting your life on track in some
Yep.
way, that it was going to look different than
Yep.
what it was at the time.
Yep. I focused on my goals rather than
Mm-hmm.
where I was that particular day.
Mm-hmm.
So on day one, I was thinking, okay, how do I get out of the bed to the wheelchair?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, you broke it down into smaller parts. Like, okay, this is the next goal I need to focus on.
Exactly.
What is it? Okay, let's work on it.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So I didn't focus on, oh shoot, I can't do much anymore. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So by focusing on the positive, it allowed me to think about things in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
But when I began writing the book, I wrote about stroke victims rather than stroke survivors.
Mm.
And it came to my attention that I needed to think about it differently. So I edited the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
But every now and then I see stroke victims in there. It's like, yeah, I probably was thinking negatively. I
Mm-hmm.
just didn't allow myself to recognize it.
Mm, right. But I think that maybe that's what's authentic about your book, right? Because while you were able to work on changing the language to have it focus on stroke survivors, at least it's honoring where you were at that time. And sometimes you did feel like a victim. And I think it's okay to own that and honor that and name it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think differently now, though.
Mm-hmm. What do you think now?
I would call it stroke thriver.
Oh, that's so cool. Tell me more about that. You got to turn that into a hashtag.
So, stroke survivors, it's important to survive, yes, but surviving isn't really thriving, right?
This is true. Right.
So I think that if I were going to write the book today, I would write stroke thriver rather
Ooh.
than stroke survivor.
Okay, when's that coming out?
Oh, it's not.
Are you sure? Maybe.
Uh, I think there are other things to do.
Okay, fair enough. So, stroke thriver. I love I
Mhm.
love that concept that, because sure, stroke survivor sounds more elevated than stroke victim, but you're right. We talk about survival mode in various different contexts, and we know that that's a person on the go, going through the motions, but not really feeling, just kind of coasting through, just treading water.
Mhm.
But we know that that's not
Mhm.
necessarily healthy or that it's adequate, but it's the best that a person can do at the time. But it's interesting how we look at that word survivor when we compare it to victim. But you just put a whole new spin on it by saying stroke thriver.
Mhm.
I think I want to borrow your language. Share some things when I talk to my clients also. This is very fascinating. Mm.
Well, you can talk about anything and you can talk about it negatively or you can talk about it positively.
Yeah.
And so I can be a stroke survivor, or I can be a stroke thriver,
Hmm.
or I can be a stroke warrior.
Oh, a warrior. Look at you.
Well, that one's not mine. It, that one belongs to stroke awareness organ.
Okay, but I still like it. What I really like is it's this gradual progression of reflection and owning yourself and your story, going from stroke
Yep,
victim to stroke survivor to stroke thriver to stroke warrior. It just shows such a elevated process of
yep,
acceptance and owning your truth and the whole part of your story, like all parts of it.
yep,
Yeah, and all the different phases that you go through when you uh, when you encounter such a challenge that obviously came unexpected, right? No one ever knows they're going to have a stroke or what that's going to mean when they go through it.
yep.
Hmm. So, Marcia, usually when people come to see me for therapy, individuals are typically in one of three places. Some people are getting started, some are in the middle, and some are looking back. So, for yourself, what part of the journey would you say that you're in terms of your untold story? Would you say that you are just getting started in the middle or looking back?
Oh, I'm in the middle.
You're in the middle?
Yep.
So, yeah, tell me more about that.
So clearly, I've gotten to the place where the beginning ended for me when I got my speech back.
Hmm.
So probably at 3.5 to 4 years after the stroke.
Right.
The middle is where you become, I think I've become my best self ever.
Oh, fascinating.
It's interesting because I do something and I'm thinking, okay, this is it. This is where I'm going to be. And I'm going, no, that's not it because I want to do this too. And I think, no, I need to do this too. So I'm building on myself a layer at a time.
Hmm.
I'm not done later. I'm sorry. I'm not done layering.
Right. Okay.
And I think that I will continue layering for almost as long as I live. whether it
Mm-hmm.
be today,
Mm-hmm.
10 years from now, 20 years from now. I think that's going to be a part of who I become.
Interesting.
And I look back, but I look back not for long.
Okay. That's very
Does that make
insightful.
sense?
Yeah, it's very insightful. It's very rich in how you've sort of described it. Very exciting. I mean, it's very exciting to me because it's like I can see how much reflection you've done and how much like you've worked through your process that allows you to be able to articulate in this way. So that's the part that excites me to see all of the changes that have come to be for you and how you've been able to get there. You're in the language you're using and how you're describing things and articulating. It's really incredible. So I'm really curious, we're at that point in our conversation where I know you've started to dabble with it already, but what I am really curious about is how your untold story affected your mental health. Like, how was your mental health impacted at the peak of everything that you were going through with the stroke?
That's such a good question. So I think I've become someone who can be reflective.
Hmm.
I think before the stroke, I was not reflective at all.
Hmm.
Just go out and do things. Do, 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 do. Now I think I look back and I go, okay, I don't really like this part of me. What am I going to do instead? Right.
Hmm.
And then I think by looking back and looking at the things that I don't like about myself or I think should be different and working on those different things, I've truly become a better person.
Sure. So, what I'm hearing you say is that prior to experiencing the stroke, you were very much a go, 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 busybody, doer kind of person. But since your stroke, as you've gone through the motions, you're able to really look at yourself through or with intentionality and in a mindful way and reflect
Yeah.
and reposition yourself. Like when you look at something, you're like, oh, maybe I can course correct that, or hey, that's not really in alignment with my values or my structure of my view of things. So let me see what I can do to adjust. So that's very fascinating. But what I would also really like to know is when you were in the depths of all that, I know you talked about anger and you talked about kind of going numb, like shutting down. Can you
Yeah.
say a little bit more about that part of your mental health being affected? Like, did you feel trapped? I mean, you talked about going in a cocoon, like, cocooning. But tell me more about what those experiences, like, what that was like on the inside.
I don't think I felt much pain.
Mm,
I don't think I allowed myself to feel much pain.
no
You
permission.
know what I mean? No permission.
Do you feel
Hmm.
like you were protecting yourself?
Definitely.
Yeah. And what do you think you were
Yeah.
protecting yourself from?
I think, I think I was protecting myself from the world
Mm,
at large and my husband at times.
mm,
Usually it's just my husband and I at home, right?
right.
He allowed people to come in one at a time, occasionally two at a time
Mm-hmm,
to see me.
mm-hmm.
So when I say the world, it's like him or the world.
Ah,
There's not much in between. So that's really kind of when things got tough for me and I shut down, I think I shut out everyone.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does.
So I will tell you that if I had to do things differently, I would not cocoon like I did.
Right. Right. It was very, I mean, that seemed to be very isolating. But you mentioned something about you were protecting yourself from the world and your husband. So the world being these one or two people at a time that he was allowing into the home, your husband. Protecting in what sense though? Like, did you feel like were you actually in agreement with your husband allowing people into the home, or like when you say you're,
Oh yeah,
yeah, okay, so you were okay with that.
yeah.
So when you say you were protecting yourself from these individuals, what made you feel you needed to protect yourself? Like what was the feeling that was coming up for you or the experience?
So there's only so much that I could take.
Mm.
And then I just couldn't take more than 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Right. So just as in like, did you feel like you had to entertain or answer questions of people or
No,
no?
I just,
Just being around people.
exactly.
Okay. Okay.
So I remember being at my aunt's funeral, and there were all these people around us, and I just really just had to completely go in another room
Mm-hmm.
and be by myself, because although I love these people,
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't be with these people. It was too much for me.
Mm. Okay. Would you say it was like easy to be overwhelmed around a lot
Yes.
of people and because you just didn't know what to do with the overwhelm? It was kind of like avoiding, like,
Yeah.
oh, this is too much,
Yeah.
too much, too much, too much this, too much that. I gotta go.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly what it's like.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's fair enough. So what's your key message to the listeners of our show? What's the thing you want them to know?
I think that no matter what life gives you,
Mm-hmm.
you turn it around and make it work for you. So it could be a stroke, it could be arthritis, it could be whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Turn it around and make it work for you.
Mm. Turn it around and make it work for you. Well, what was that game-changing inspiration that is close to you that reflects your untold story? So, was there ever like during the midst of everything you were experiencing, was there ever anything like an inspirational quote or a book, a person, a place, or an event kind of thing that really spoke volumes for you?
I read a book by Jill Bolte Taylor,
Mm-hmm.
and it was about a woman who had a stroke,
Mm-hmm.
and was a neuroscientist.
Mm,
And that was the first book after I had my stroke.
right.
And that turned my life around,
Mm,
because if she could do it, I could do it.
right.
That's what I took away.
Right. That's awesome that you found that book
It was amazing.
and you could resonate with her story and her pain points, and you could also see that she aspired to get back to as much of her living as she could, and you were like, okay, I can do that. She did it, so
Yep,
I can do it. And she suffered and she struggled and that seemed rough for her, but I mean, she wrote a book, so I think I will too.
exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, that's probably why I wrote my book, because if she can do it, I can do it.
All right. So tell us, what is a cause or an organization that has been impactful to you on your journey that you would like to give a shout out to?
Stroke Awareness Oregon. They are amazing.
Yeah.
And if anyone has had a stroke, or if they've been a caretaker
Mhm.
or caregiver for anyone who's had a stroke, you should look them up online.
Okay. That sounds like a really good resource. Stroke Awareness Oregon. All right. Shout out to them. All right. And so then how can people connect with you if they would like to? How are you findable? What platforms are you on?
So they can go to Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. But if they really want to get me,
Right.
they should go to my website, Stroke Forward.
Okay. Perfect. So we have grabbed all that information. So we are going to put that on the show notes page. People can click on your name and go ahead and connect with you. So that's perfect. Awesome.
Yep.
Well, Marcia, guess what?
What?
You've just dared yourself to share. Congratulations. You did
Yay!
it. Oh my goodness.
Thank you so much, Salima.
Oh, Marcia, I would just like to take a moment to express my gratitude for the deep story that you've shared in this space today. I mean, sharing with full vulnerability and openness, what it is like to endure a stroke and what it took for you to move through it and reclaim your life again, and coming full circle as you now encourage others through their stroke journey, and talking about stroke victim to stroke survivor to stroke thriver and borrowing stroke warrior, to amplify where you are. My goodness, I am truly grateful to have been able to hear and witness your story today. So thank you for the deep conversation and for all the daring and sharing. This was so awesome.
Thank you, Selena. It's been a pleasure.
Amazing. Once again, Marcia, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.